Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of the Super Real Estate Bros podcast. I am one of your hosts, Brandon Snyder. I am joined by my friend Dave, your mortgage guy. I did it. Yes, that's the best part. That's why we do it. And today we are joined by Mr. Texas Real Estate himself, Jason Bible. Jason, man, why don't you just give us a quick blurb about who you are?
Yeah, we're a real estate investment company here in Houston, Texas. We work the Houston and Corpus Christi market, and we're mostly buy and hold. So short-term rentals, long-term rentals. We do a little bit of commercial real estate. We actually bought this building. It's called the Texas Real Estate Investment Center. It's about 30,000 square feet. We've got about 30, it's all real estate. So we have about 30 tenants in here, and they're all real estate related. So mortgage companies, title companies, insurance companies, all that sort of stuff. So we do a little bit of commercial, but we're mostly single family residential. So that's what we do here.
I love it. How long have you been investing in real estate?
I started full-time in 2013. I started as a part-time real estate investor, flipping a couple houses in about 2010. So in 2013, I put a business plan together with my business partner at the time, Tom, and we started flipping houses. Essentially, we were a competitor for home investors, the We Buy Ugly Houses folks. And that first 6 months, we bought 7 houses. That next year, we bought 67. The year after that, 90. And then for about 6 years there, we were doing over 100 houses a year. So that was our fix and flip business. I sold that in 2018, 2019, and then just went into buy and hold. We built the Mr. Texas Real Estate brand in February 2019, and just been buying as much real estate we can get our hands on down here.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That's an awesome resume. I actually came to know Jason through the Renters Warehouse jet lending event. I mean, that was like the staple of Houston real estate investing. I mean, everybody would be there, 500 people, an event. It got so big. And most recently, actually, they changed venues, I think, because the old place shut down. But I mean, there were memories there, man. I remember meeting all kinds of cool people and learning so much about real estate through just being in proximity with people like yourself and those around you. So, man, we're honored to have you on the podcast. Dave, we're going to get nerdy today.
Man, I already got like 5 questions that just came to the top of my head. If I'm already allowed to jump in line here and go first.
Do it,
Jason,
man.
You mentioned single family and your experience with it. I'd love to get your thought process on what you've seen happen since prior to COVID, so 2019 through today, on single family and investing and holding. Because I think a ton has changed. I think some of you've got to make this percentage return and you've got to, flip, or you got to hold them. I mean, so much has changed. I own single family homes, and I mean, some of the stuff we're looking at now just doesn't even make sense with rates, the cost of the properties, and rent. So if you don't mind breaking down what it was like in 2019 through today, and really give us your expertise on what you think still makes sense when it comes to buying single family properties right now in the Houston area.
So I'll tell you, starting in 2017, October 2017, I got on our radio show. We have a nationally syndicated radio show, and I said, if you think real estate's expensive now, just wait. And everybody laughed, and nobody's laughing now. Yep. It was a big joke around town. I would say it everywhere. And everybody thought it was funny. There's a real estate crash coming. Jason, you understand real estate can't get more expensive. And I said, you have seen nothing yet. This is going to be absolutely insane. So the market from about 2016 to 2019 was insanely hot, especially down here. Months of inventory kept dropping. Days on market kept dropping. I mean, inventory collapsed. More people were moving here. This was all before COVID. The market before COVID was really hot. And then COVID hits, and I will never forget it. I was hanging out with a couple of friends at a bar. We were at a happy hour, and I'm sitting there watching TV, and they said, as of tomorrow, we're going to close all bars and restaurants. That was in March. They canceled the Final Four. They canceled the rodeo. If you guys are not from Houston, it's the largest rodeo in the world. It's here. It's a big deal. It's a month long. They canceled rodeo. And so the country was shut down. And so I'm sitting there looking at data. I mean, they essentially shut real estate down for, I don't know, 6, 8 weeks, 2 months, 3 months. I can't remember when they finally started. We were able to start closing deals. But one of the things I realized early on was, oh, wow, rates are dropping. And the single family house is now one of the most important assets that you can own because you are stuck at home. And I said, guys, values are about to explode. And they're like, there's no way. The market's already crazy. And sure enough, what happened? Boom, 30%, 20, 30% a year appreciation for 2 years. So that's essentially kind of what has happened. And a lot of the seeds for this expansion were sown back in 2007 when a little known law that was passed by Barney Frank and a handful of other guys essentially regulated how much local banks can lend to real estate developers. These are not builders, these are developers. So for those of you guys that are maybe not in tune with kind of how real estate actually works, Pulte Homes doesn't go and develop a big piece of land and put homes up. There's a developer that comes in and moves all the dirt around, puts in the utilities, puts in roads, does all that stuff. And then Pulte, Lennar, whoever starts building homes in that neighborhood. Well, through some of the legislation that happened in 2007, they limited how much local and regional banks can lend to real estate developers. When they did that, it completely de-incentivized real estate development. So you saw construction, new home construction, take an absolute dive. It's the first time in history it's done this, and there's a huge gap between houses we can build and houses we need. And that's really what's driving prices, that and demographics. So I keep telling everybody, I'm like, when COVID happened, when interest rates doubled in the last year, I said, it's not going to stop. Appreciation is not going to stop. So one of the things that we here in Houston, the median home price is about $350,000. 20% a year appreciation is about $60,000. Every house you don't buy, you're missing out on $5,000 a month in appreciation. Like when you really break down real estate math, and I have not seen anybody do real estate math correctly, but when you really break down real estate math, the only thing that makes you wealthy is appreciation, period. I don't care if it's commercial, residential, single family, multifamily, commercial, it's appreciation that brings you wealth. That's it. So, Dave, to go back to your point, man, what makes sense? And I just sit down and say, if it's cash flows, if it's negative cash flow, just buy it because they ain't making any more of it. It's not going away anytime soon. There's a massive number of people that are moving to Houston. Texas was the #1 destination for U-Haul again this year. Mostly people coming from California. So the way I look at the marketplace is just like I've looked at it for the last 5 years. Like we can have all these crazy black swan events. We can have COVID. We can have the Ukraine situation. And it's not stopping this market. You can have interest rates that have doubled. I mean, think about all the stuff that's been thrown at single family real estate, and it's just not stopping. So when I hear people tell me, Jason, you gotta be careful because it's like 2008. I'm like, explain to me the math behind 2008. Because we're sitting at like 3 months of inventory. And before we get down to price reductions, we have to get to 10 months of inventory. So explain to me how that works. So it's a simple math equation when I look at it. Brandon was talking earlier about all the charts and graphs. I just put it all out there. I put it on social media. I'm like, guys, explain to me where this real estate crash is coming from because I don't see it. I just don't see it, at least for investors.
Well, and you see now more than ever just people using the data to try to put into scare tactics and hit their point. I mean, I saw, foreclosure up 187%. Well, when you're going from 0 to any number, the percentage is going to be absurdly high. But yeah, based on all of my research, also the foreclosures aren't going to be flooding the market. We're going to have some, and they're going to end up selling at market value.
I want to touch on something that Jason mentioned. So when I'm talking to real estate clients, whether it's an investor or I have a first-time investor right now, I'll use him as an example. the builder, it's a new construction. The builder was selling for like 50 grand off. We're like, hey, let's get this. It looks like a good deal. It's in a hot neighborhood in Katy. Katy's the third fastest city in the country growth wise, right? I said, hey, this is a pretty good deal. I think we should take a look at it. And we end up going under contract on it. And then we look at it and we say, hey, over the past 2 years, that 20 to 30% appreciation, that wasn't real. That's not happening again. But that 3 to 5% appreciation that Texas has been getting historically is absolutely real. And you should base any financial decision you make for your wealth building off of that fact alone. And most of the time when I talk to investors, that's where we land at, is if I can get natural appreciation and I can get a tenant in there that's paying, I can, maybe if I own multiple doors, and this is like high level stuff, but, cost segregation studies and things like that, then, we can do so much more with our money. But at the base level, that 3 to 5% appreciation that we're seeing, in some places it's higher, right? Naturally every year it's higher in certain places. But in Houston, that 3 to 5%, I've been here since 2009. And I've just seen it grow every single year. I go to listing appointments like that. Hey, this is how much appreciation you've gained. Let's take out that 2 years of COVID and let's really look at this. You've gained this much money. And so I absolutely agree with that, Jason. I think that people need to be looking at the long haul as this is my appreciation. These are the things that I'm going to be getting as a result. Did you have something that you wanted to bring up?
Yeah. So Brandon, if you want to pull this up real quick, Dave, you're absolutely right. This is foreclosure starts comparing pre and post pandemic. And you're absolutely right, Dave. These guys are running around going, foreclosures are up 900%, which is statistically true. But I used to work for this guy named Bob Emery, one of the sharpest guys I ever worked for. And his motto is as compared to what? So when someone throws me a stat, I'm like, as compared to what? So I look at this and I'm like, we're not even back to pre-pandemic foreclosures.
Correct.
So I'm like, hey, and Brandon, it sounds like you work with a lot of investors and maybe some homeowners on the retail side. A lot of retail homeowners are sitting there going, well, I'm going to wait for this crash. And you're like, dude, there's no crash coming.
Right.
Like there's no massive foreclosures. Like it's not happening.
Well, and let's talk about who could actually even fall into this category, because anybody who bought prior to COVID and even the early part of COVID still has an absurd amount of equity. So if you were going to get foreclosed on, you would just sell and break even or make money. The only people I believe, based on the data I've seen and the research, that could really get foreclosed on once leveling off post, forbearance and things like that, are people who bought in the first half of 2022, no money down with a VA down payment assistance, an FHA minimum. Their home decreased. They lost their job. Now the end of the world is coming, and that they would have to turn the keys in. Everybody else would sell. And that's the opposite of what happened, because I was in the business in 2008 during the crash. Everybody was so far upside down, they saw no way to get out of it. So they did let it go into foreclosure. So that's not going to happen. And so there's nothing that implies that, unless something drastic was to happen with the economy, which at this point doesn't look that way so far.
Dave, can we talk about something real quick? And Jason, I'd love to get your thoughts on this. And this is a broad, just economic view, but I'm watching the unemployment rates and I'm like, where the hell is the crash coming from?
Yeah.
Because unemployment rates are ridiculously low, even for what happened with oil over the past year and Ukraine and all that craziness and what's been going on economically. We have an all-time low unemployment rate. Foreclosures are still stupid low, below pre-pandemic levels. So where's the crash coming from? And the reality is that if we crash, it's not because of unemployment or foreclosures. The chances of it happening are severely low. I mean, we just pointed out a couple of things, but Jason, I want your thoughts on that, especially unemployment being a factor.
Well, I think there's two things here. I'm trying to pull up Logan Mahamashi here. If you guys are not following this guy on Housing Wire, he's incredible and
fantastic.
I found him in the middle of COVID. So when COVID first hit, I had all these funds and so I manage real estate funds and syndications, and I had just opened our second fund, and I was a little concerned. I'm like, well, shoot, I don't want to get a bunch of redemptions from my fund because everybody is freaking out. And so I'm like, well, where are the adults at? Like, where are the guys that are smart, that like can read a chart, and like, where are those guys at? And in single family residential real estate, there's not a whole lot of them. There's a lot of really great guys in commercial, but there's not a lot of good analysts in residential. So I somehow ran into Logan in Housing Wire, and then I ran into Mike Sorensen over at Altos Research. And I started watching those guys, and I'm like, oh, these guys are data guys. They're adults. And I'll tell you, one of the things that Logan puts up, and I can find it, it's not in my folder here, but I can find it a little bit. It is mortgage originations by credit score. And Dave, you being a mortgage guy would love this. Like 80% of mortgages since 2008, the borrower has a 720 credit score or higher.
Correct.
Like their default rate, even in a recession, is like 0.01%. So all of those foreclosures that happened in 07 and 08 were a result of giving mortgages to people who shouldn't have had them. If you have a 720 credit score or higher, even in a recession, the likelihood of default is less than 99%. So it's like, it's less than 1%. So it's like, where are these foreclosures coming from? Because it ain't going to be from these people over here. I can tell you that right now.
Well, Jason, here's one thing I really want to get your expertise on, which cracks me up. The term crash is thrown around way too much in general, but I want to get your opinion on what would define a crash for you. So just some general parameters, and then you tell me. If home prices go back to 2019, prior to COVID, is that a crash? If home prices go down 20%, is that a crash? 40%, is that a crash? So I want to get your opinion on it. You would define a crash based on this percentage of home prices going down, because that's the other thing that drives me nuts. The people who are talking that don't back it up is they're saying it's a crash, and then they're going to grasp at the lowest number possible. Like, hey, home price went down 10%. I told you there was going to be a crash. And it's like, man, come on. That's a cowardly way of, that's a cowardly way of handling it. So Jason, I'm going to put you on the spot. What would you define as a crash based on a home prices going down by a certain percentage?
For me, a crash is 20%.
Okay.
So Brandon, if you want to throw my screen up here, this is the Phoenix market. This is Case-Shiller. So a little honesty and data here. Houston is not in the Case-Shiller index because it's the largest real estate market in the country. And Houston, because it's got so many sales, so much price action, it would the Case-Shiller index would mirror Houston. That makes sense. It's called the law of large numbers. It's just too big a data set. So like Dallas, Fort Worth, San Antonio, Austin, those are in the Case-Shiller. Phoenix is also in the Case-Shiller index. That's what a crash looks like. You look right there in the middle of the screen. They peak in 2006, and then it collapsed right there before 2010. So it almost hits 240, and then it falls to about 90. So this is a ratio, by the way. So it's an index. It's normalized for 100, which is in 2000. So it drops by over 60%. That's what a real estate crash looks like. In Houston, we only lost about 5% of values in the middle of the worst real estate crash in the history of the world. Correct. So when real estate people come to me and go, well, Jason, you don't understand. Houston had a real estate crash in 2008. I'm like, did it? Did it? Now, certain neighborhoods got decimated, but Houston as a whole certainly didn't. And I'll tell you, when you talk to, let's say, some of the best hard money lenders in town, you mentioned Jet Lending. We do a ton of business with Jet Lending. The guys over there are fantastic. When you talk to the guys who own hard money lending companies or private lenders and say, what properties did you take back during the crash? It wasn't Katy, Sugarland, Pearland, Woodland. It wasn't any of those. It was like crap in the 5th Ward, 3rd Ward, Sunnyside. It was all of that stuff that was speculative. I mean, it really was. It wasn't the good areas of town with the great schools and the good HOAs. It was these gentrifying areas of town that just got absolutely hammered. A-Leaf was another one that just got absolutely shellacked. So those areas of town that were not great, they just saw a lot of price action. Those are the ones that really took it on the chin. But I did, like, to go back to your question, Dave, like, it's 20%. That's
Perfect.
That's when you've lost 7 to 8 years of that 3 to 5% appreciation. That's the like the death nail, if you will. Brandon, you said something earlier I thought was interesting. You being a realtor, you got access to MLS. When you get off this call, start pulling all the data below $300,000. So HAR, it gets really crazy. So most of my assets, except for my Airbnbs and commercial stuff, are below $350,000. So when you pull the data from HAR, what you will find is that below, let's say right now, the annual report for Houston came out, and it said in 22, the median home price went up 13%. Not bad, right? Normally 3 to 5, like you mentioned. You go below $350,000 and below, it's over 20%. So when you're hanging out with your sellers and your buyers, especially somebody who doesn't own a home, it's like, look, dude, statistically, you will not be able to build real wealth until you own the roof over your head. And you can look at the national data all you want, and it says 7% appreciation, 10%. Some markets doing good, some markets not. But I'm telling you, that first-time home buyer below 350, at least below 300, dude, those houses are getting 20% more expensive every single year. Yep. When you hone it down to your marketplace, especially in Katy, like 498, some of those not 498. What's the
494,
494? That's it. 494. You pull up those zip codes, and the overall market may be only 10, 15%. You look at those markets, it's like 30. So it's like, hey, Mr. Buyer, it doesn't matter what the rate is. It really doesn't. Because you've got to lock in the price today. You're going to refi in the next 3 to 5 years. Hell, rates are already down 1.5% from their October high anyway.
Yep.
So it's like you're just going to. In fact, I work with a retail mortgage gal. If y'all have Jennifer Hernandez on. She's absolutely fantastic, and they're already offering refinance certificates to book. So it's like when you start looking at what some of these mortgage bankers are doing, mortgage companies are doing. Like with the rate buy downs and all the other stuff, they already know these things are getting refied in the next couple years anyway. So it's like lock in your principal balance now. It's that, Dave, you probably use this all the time. Date the rate, marry the house. Like that's that thing that's kind of going around right now. So it's when you break it down by submarket, you really start to see like, look, man, you're probably already on the edge. You probably can't afford this house a year from now when it's 50 grand more.
No, 100%. I think something that's really important that you talked about that I want to dig into a little bit is when we're talking about general socioeconomical statistics of Houston, we have to think about the things that have happened in the past 15 years in Houston. So 13 years since I've been here, right? Almost 15 years since the crash of '08, right? The things that have happened. Our medical system has become top rated in the country. Mm-hmm. We have a luxury lifestyle that's out here now, kind of more important than it was back in '08, right? Tillman's spearheaded a lot of kind of revitalizing the city and making it a destination for people to travel to, right? You have traveling nurses that come here all the time. That's revitalized the Airbnb industry out here and made that really a talking point for a lot of investors, right? When we talk about Katy, third fastest city in the country growth-wise, they have some of the best builders out there and things like that. But Cypress, Katy, Conroe, best school districts in the greater Houston area, people want to move here. And so what's going to continue to happen is the people who are moving here, they're bringing up the average income. The average income of someone in the country, I think last time I checked, was in the 50s. But the average income in Houston of a family is above 70. So we already have, for a cheaper housing market, right? If you go to Denver, it's 600 for the same home I bought here at 200, right? When we're talking about just growth coming in here, the people who are moving here are bringing more money with them, and the city's growing even more and more, and everyone wants to come here. So we really have to look at, when it comes to, oh my gosh, the real estate market's going to crash. No, you have to start buying real estate because you have to build that wealth. That is your only objective over the next 5 years. Realistically, it should have been probably 2 years ago, but you can start now, right? It should have been probably before 2 years ago, but you get in that real estate, you start doing that. You mentioned doing the Airbnb thing, short-term rentals, long-term rentals. It's going to create that wealth. And we're talking like your home prices, your portfolio goes up a couple $100,000 in the next 5 to 10 years just by holding the real estate and refinancing if you have to.
Yeah, I don't. I'm pulling up another chart for you guys. I think, to go back to your point, I have always said that the housing affordability metric is probably one of the stupidest things I've ever seen. And you hit the nail right on the head. If you've got a neighborhood whose median income is $60,000, what people don't realize is only 3% of the real estate market is for sale at any one time. It's an industry that's called on the margin. Our industry works on the margin. It's 3% over here. I don't care what the other 97% that live there can afford. What I want to know is, what can the people moving here can afford? And that whole housing affordability metric, I've always thought was absolutely absurd. So what I've got pulled up here, and you have probably not seen this before, but this is mortgage debt service payments. So in other words, mortgage payments as a percent of disposable personal income. So it has never been lower, meaning homeowners make so much money that their mortgage payment is the lowest percentage that we've ever seen as a percentage of disposable income, despite the fact that rates have doubled. So when people tell me, Jason, they can't afford the home price has gone up, real estate mortgage rates have doubled, I'm like, I just go back to this chart. And I'm like, I look at 2008, 2009, where it's at 7%, and I look at where we're at now, 4%, and I'm like, will you explain to me how this is going to double? Wages have to drop in half, or houses have to double in price for us to get even close to 2008.
Well, and that's where, Jason, that's what tripped me out, because if you remember, when rates really started to spike up, that was the narrative in the real estate industry, right? Or a narrative, which was, this is killing affordability. This isn't fair. I had that one client who could barely buy 220 and rates went up and now they can't get approved. That was such a small percentage. There was no data that backed it up. And they threw it out there where you're kind of mind screwing the home buyer into thinking that they can't afford. The truth of the matter is, any one of us, if our mortgage payment went up, let's say $200, we could still afford that payment, right? So they were literally presenting it as everybody is completely maxed. Now they went up $200 and now nobody can afford a home, et cetera, which was terrible. And people ran with that narrative, right? Including agents. Like, I would see agents saying that this is killing affordability, and that's not the case.
Well, here's what I think a lot of people miss. Your mortgage payment, at least the principal balance of the mortgage, doesn't change on a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. Although I think the smart people, we're doing this right now, are getting 10-1 ARMs. We're doing a lot of that right now. But when you look at, that's a fixed payment. Now your taxes and insurance are always going to go up. I think a real disservice is when real estate agents and the real estate profession said, hey, don't buy now. There A, may be a crash, and B, we don't know where rates are going. Well, guess what? What did rents do in the last year? Like, I bought an apartment complex in Baytown, and as soon as I finished the pro forma and we raised all the money for our syndication, I got the next report, and the next report was rents are up 20%.
Yep.
And rents ain't going to stop, because we can't. All the new construction that's going on right now is in apartments, typically Class A apartment complexes. So if you thought your mortgage was expensive, wait till you see that next rent increase, because that's going up 3 or 4. We have some properties that we had one that went from $900 to $1,300 a month, $400 a month, and that tenant immediately signed that lease. Like, they didn't even bat an eye when we sent the renewal. So yeah, if you think mortgage rates are expensive, see what the cost of renting is these days. It's horrendous.
Yeah, 100%. And here's the thing. when we had over the past 6 months, when interest rates went to 7.5%, something that got missed by a lot of professionals in our industry, whether that was people buying short-term rentals, the investment side, things like that, or just people in general, professionals like real estate professionals going out and saying things and just quite honestly speaking out of their butts. Here's what really happened. People still had to buy and sell real estate. People still had to move in and out of the city. People still had to move in and out of the state. They moved from California because they got a job at the Tesla plant in Austin, or they had to go to Florida because grandma was sick, or they had to sell their house because XYZ happened, right? These things are still, in any market, are still going to happen. And that's what a lot of people have missed over the past 6 months. And now, rates are cooling down. We're at 6%. We're trending towards the end of the year, hopefully in the high 4s, which is a normal real estate market, right? What we've seen is a bunch of people fearmonger over interest rates, not realizing the opportunity that was still there. There are still going to be distressed properties. Actually, if you're a real estate investor, not everyone's getting retail for their homes anymore. So you have a better opportunity of going and getting a house at a deep discount instead of having to buy retail like some investors did over the past 2 years. If you're a normal residential real estate buyer, you can go get a deal. The builders will pay your closing costs, give you 50 grand off, the home will appraise, etc. There's so many opportunities out there. So stop watching the news. Stop watching the fake guru that you watch on YouTube and you watch their TikToks because you think they're great. And listen to people like Jason. I've been following his content, guys. He's not BSing you. The dude's smart and he backs it up with data. And it's funny you mentioned the 720 credit score thing. I was sitting in a Chase thing. We have a partnership with Chase, and they were like, hey, they brought in an economist and they said, hey, 720 to 740 was the average credit score.
Which is crazy, isn't it? Like that's a crazy high credit score for it to be the average. Right.
And that was during COVID when people were worried, am I going to have to tighten my budget? Am I going to have to do this? People were borrowing money at such a cheap rate. How much debt were people carrying, right? So having a 720 to 740 credit score was huge. And it's still continuing. It's not like magically people just trash their credit score in 3 months and now, they can't get a house. Right? Those people are still out there. They're still buying and selling real estate. So, the point behind that is you should be listening to the people. And I'm not saying listen to us. I would love for you to listen to us. And hopefully when you're listening to this podcast, you actually get some value out of it. But you should be listening to the people who have mucked it. Right? Dave went through 08. Jason's been in the industry for a while. Okay? We've sold over 100 homes in the past 3 years. Right? We're not talking about these things because we want to take your money and we want to take advantage of it. We want to partner with people. We want to get people investing in real estate. We want to teach people wealth building, right? I'm literally sitting in a dilemma right now where I don't know if I want to sell my personal residence when I go buy my next house in 6 months because I got it at a 2.8 interest rate. I've gained 70 grand in equity and I can rent it out for $2,000. My mortgage payment's $1,600.
Yeah, I was going to say, can you rent it? I'd rent the thing.
I was like, I'm going to search for some validation in this episode. Dave's like, no, you need to sell it. Dave's handling my loan. Dave's like, no, you need to sell it, take that equity, and go pay off some crap.
Well, take a look. I just pulled up I found it in one of my annual reports. I'm at this time of year. February is usually when I get kicked off and do all my predictions for the next year. I do it in February because all the data is not in until like middle of January. I'm actually doing this presentation for the Brick Club, which is up at Bryan College Station. I'm doing that on Tuesday or Thursday next week. So this is mortgage originations by credit score. So if you notice, the light blue bar at the top is a 760 plus. The dark gray is a 720 plus. So everything below the dark gray bar is 720 and below. And what do you notice? Starting in about 2008. If you had less than a 720, you ain't getting a loan. Now, that's not completely true. They make some exceptions. Dave, you probably work with some borrowers that got less than 720. If they've got some cash, some other things, low DTI, whatever, you can get them into a house. But by and large, below 720, that market collapsed. Like they were not giving loans to people. If you look, 2003, 2004, 2005, 50% of your loan volume was 720 and below. Those folks were the most at risk for default. After the real estate crash, what happened? If you had a 720 credit score, it was tough to get a loan. 75 to 80% of the folks that got loans since 2008 had a 720 plus. Like you said, Brandon, Chase was like, this is who we work with. They're 720, average is 720. I think I read in the last, since mortgage rates doubled, it was some crazy, I wish I could find it. I've got it a slide somewhere. Like 80% of folks who got home mortgages since rates have doubled, the average was like 780. So the mortgage industry has done a damn good job on risk management for borrowers. They're just not lending money to anybody. And I think it's because they don't want to have to buy these loans back when they go in default. So they're ultimately responsible for the paper if it goes belly up. And when I look at this, I tell people, I'm like, who here has a 720 credit score that goes into default? Almost nobody. So there's none of these, there's no foreclosures coming, guys. You're basing your, and I think what's scary, and you guys see it as real estate agents, oh, there's a crash coming, There's not. What your fiduciary duties to your client, what data do you have to back up that opinion? And there isn't any. So,
well,
just watch.
And society and social media and everything else allows everybody to be an expert, right? And not know their shit. And then that's why you have these scare tactics. Everyone's going for the clicks and the views off of YouTube. I did a video on it where I was like, look, if it's somebody in industry, you've got to take it with a grain of salt, see what the data is to get an opinion. If somebody is putting together the same data to get a scare tactic, that's to get views. There's no clicks and there's no money on YouTube by talking about the truth / positive news as there is a crash is coming and here's how I'm going to prove it. Foreclosure up 187%. You know, they're skewing the data. And that's what cracks me up is the ones that are experts that aren't in the business, but getting the views and using that approach. I mean, and I know we got to get out of here soon, but the one that cracked me up the most was there's one guy, I think it's called RE Investing or something. And he, prior to quasi the market slowing down, he went and tried to say, based on these zip codes, I'm predicting where home prices are going to crash the most. The zip codes he used were from the '08 crash. And those neighborhoods are completely different, such as Sharpstown today is a completely different neighborhood with home prices way higher. And I know because I was in '08 and Sharpstown was my territory versus in '08 when that crash happened. And so he's taking data, for sure he's taking data that's not relevant to make that message to get the views. You know, if you show that the world is burning down, people are going to click on it. When we upload this, we'll probably get 15 views, right? Like nobody.
No, absolutely not. That is no. I mean, one of the things that Dave's touching on here is really important. I watch, and I actually, you know, Ryan Harper, Jason.
Yeah, I know Ryan real well. Yeah.
He was like, he made a post the other day. It was like, who's your fake gurus? And I was like, Pace Morby, because I have beef with Pace because Pace keeps posting about a crash, and he's really like, he's not very clear about how owner finance works, but tells everyone should do it. So I get like 20 sign calls on my listings a day. Hey, do you want to do owner finance? I'm like, no, they want retail, and they have to take their equity. Click.
Yeah.
And so it was funny because when we're putting these podcasts together, I'm like, man, we should talk about stuff that people actually want to hear about because I'm not in this for the clicks. I have a fiduciary duty to my clients. You know, like the other day, my investor, he was like, hey man, like, you know, is this the best decision for my family? I'm like, dude, you're buying in Sunterra and Katy. The lagoon's almost done. I'm like, this is a rental property that I think is an absolute rock star because it's 2 streets from the lagoon. Right. Yeah. And my fiduciary duties to my clients, Dave's fiduciary duties to his clients as well. And when we're talking about what the next steps are and what you should be doing, it should be buy real estate now, buy land now, because these things are going to continue to go up in price. They're not, and if they do go down, it's a small market adjustment to mirror a recession that we're going through. But something Dave and I talked about recently, these things are not mutually exclusive. Recessions and housing market crashes are not mutually exclusive.
That's right. You're absolutely right. Yeah, the real estate market runs in about 20-year cycles. And it's been like that since like the 1800s. And it's pretty clear. You can see it. And mostly what precedes those cycles is changes in really it's when Main Street has a recession, a really hard one, and they can't make their payments. And even then, real estate demand is such that you'll get a little dip in prices, but you're not getting 20% swings. I think it's fascinating to watch. To go back to Dave's point, you can type in any year in YouTube and real estate crash and see all the good. They say the same crap year after year, right? So I was telling everybody, like, guys that come up to we teach a little seminar how to do real estate. So whenever they come up here, I'm like, guys, just go to YouTube and just type in, like, your favorite guru and real estate crash. My other favorite is watching Robert Kiyosaki. I don't know how that guy's made money other than his books, because he's been so damn long. It's incredible. So,
man, that guy, there may not be somebody who's more conservative when it comes to, like, he's finally seems like he's biting off on some things, but it blows my mind. And the sad thing is, you get enough views, likes, followers, subscribers, whatever, man, it breeds some traction to where you default to that person's an expert. It's sad, but and you don't even know their own finances. That's the shit that cracks me up, is you can talk all the talk, but now we have no idea what any of these people are worth and or have their own money. And I'm jumping a little bit here, but one thing that blew my mind is Andrew Tate, not to dig into something else, but Andrew Tate got arrested. They seized his assets. His assets were $3.5 million in cars that he may or may not have loans on, some other random stuff. And I was like, man, this is somebody where people were drastically following his advice like it was the gospel. Is that a lot of money? Not a lot of money, right?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm in a group that Andrew's in, and I can tell you right now, from and I've known him before. I haven't met him, but in our groups, I've known him before he got real famous. I don't know where I saw that news article, $4 million in assets, and I'm like, that were confiscated. I'm like, he has 2 cars that are $4 million apiece. So I'm like, something doesn't sound right here. So we'll see how that whole thing goes. But his gaming enterprise alone is pretty large. So it'll be kind of interesting to see how that all shakes out. But it's funny. It's like the richest guys I know, and I work with a lot of guys that are my parents' age, a little bit older, especially on the commercial real estate side. And how those guys built their wealth is the same strategy that we use. We build a portfolio, 20, 30 properties. Appreciation carries us to wealth. We sell half and pay the other half off. That's why when you go down like I-10, I'll give you a good example of this. When you guys go down I-10, I know a handful of guys that own a significant number of those buildings. They're individual owners. They're not, now REITs and stuff own the really big ones. But I know the guys that own those buildings, and they'll tell you the same story. They're like, yeah, I bought this one, and then I paid this one off, paid that one off. And that's kind of how you do it. It's when you get these gurus that have these crazy strategies, they just don't work.
And Jason, I want to ask, so to clarify, then they're living off of the other properties for, through the rest of their life, right? That in theory, that's their retirement plan, correct?
Yeah, that's their retirement plan. And in working with all these really successful folks, they live they live a nice life, but it's not what you think it is. It's probably a good way to put it. It's not the Ty Lopez, showing up in the G6 and, all the lamp. Now, a couple of these guys got some nice cars, but it's not as extravagant as people think it is.
Well, you don't know people's real wealth. And Ty Lopez is one of those examples where he was actually, as I feel like, this is just an opinion, he was as big as Grant Cardone was years ago, let's say 17, 16, 18 type period, and then just fell off the earth. But going back to your investment strategy there, the sad thing is it's not sexy, right? No. It's not to get rich quick. Everybody in the world has an opinion on, oh, that's dumb, flip it and make 30,000 or 100 grand or whatever it is. And the truth of the matter is that may be, in theory, the only real estate plan long-term where you're setting up your retirement and you're brilliant, because flipping if the idea is to flip, I feel like that's based on the market sometimes, right? Versus buying and holding. No one has ever been like, let me tell you the dumbest thing I ever did. I bought this one property 10 years ago. I'm a moron. It's actually worth less than what I bought it for. Like, nobody has ever said that about real estate, right?
Well, here's what I'll tell you. If you had 12 properties in 2019, worth about $180,000, in the last 3 years, you would have $1 million in equity, because it's almost 50% appreciation, at least in the markets that we buy in. So when investors come to me and say, hey, what's the future going to look like? And I said, and you two guys are great to take a poll on. I talk to a lot of agents. I talk to a lot of LOs, and this is what everybody's telling me. Jason, there are a lot of buyers sitting on the sidelines. And Brandon, you made a great point. I'm in my single family house at 2.8% interest, and you're like, shit, I don't know if I want to go out and buy my next house because that 2.8 looks like 6 right now. So when rates dip, and they will, one of the predictions I made in the beginning of 22 is rates are going up, but they're going to dip right at the end of the year. We're going to see that again this year. And Logan and I share the same theory, and so does Mike over at over Altos, that if we get rates in the mid-5s, it is going to kick off a flurry of buying activity, just like it did during COVID. We're going to see 20 and 30% a year appreciation again. So I keep telling everybody, you need to buy all the real estate you can now, because whether it cash flows or not, just single family, because we're going to see this massive appreciation again, because there's all this pent up demand. If you guys remember back to COVID, the whole world shut down and everyone started looking around and go, well, I'd like to buy a house. Rates dropped. What happened? Everyone jumped in the market. Everybody's buying as much as they can, right? This is going to happen again. It's going to be longer, and it's going to be way higher at this next time. So if you're looking to retire off of real estate, the only real way that it works is to do it mortgage free. So go buy you 10 houses, go buy you 20 houses. You build a little portfolio with 30 houses. You're going to sell 15, you're going to pay off the other 15, and you're probably going to net cash flow about $15,000 to $20,000 a month. That's enough for most people. So I keep telling folks, I'm like, the next wave is coming. This is an artificial time in real estate where demand is so low. Everyone's sitting on the sidelines. I'm like, just wait. It'll happen either this year or next year, and it's going to be crazy. But you got time, because the unprofessional investor is sitting on the sidelines scared. So we're buying stuff that we shouldn't even be buying. Like, in other words, there were so many investors in the marketplace that these deals wouldn't even make it to us. Well, now everybody's calling us because we're buying, right? So I see almost everything that happens in Houston before it closes. And I'm like, dude, we need to go buy more. We need to raise more money. We need to go better mortgage product. We're working on that every single day. And I keep telling folks, I'm like, buy everything, get your hands on it, because this market is not going to stop. Everyone's going to get either accustomed to the rates, or B, the rates drop. And like you said, death, divorce, relocation. That's what drives marketplaces. And it's going to open back up, and it's going to happen real fast. It's going to blow you guys away how crazy it gets.
Yep. I agree. It's not even, to me, I say it doesn't matter what rates are or what home prices are doing. It's the narrative that'll end up killing the market in some regard. And you're seeing that now.
Absolutely. So
let it pick back up. I mean, I'm telling you right now, we had a house at 230. It's a little bit out there, right? I live in Hockley, and so Hockley, people don't want to move as far away from Houston, right? At 230, we had been on the market over 60 days, and then when rates hit 6 about a week and a half ago, I had 7 showings on it. We put it under contract, right? I'm getting showings on listings. I mean, I have an investment property. I'm probably going to send it to you, Jason. We actually just fell back out of contract on it. But I mean, I'm getting calls daily on it. So the market is reacting to the interest rates, and you're absolutely right. I mean, I think I'm a little more pessimistic. I think if we have to get to 4.5 to be nuts balls to the wall again, like we were. But even at 5.5, people are like, oh, this is 2019 interest rates and we're close to 2021, 2022 prices. Oh, hell yes, I'm in. And so that, I mean, you're absolutely right. So if you take anything out of this podcast episode, because we had to spend the time to go through this episode and spend a little bit more time because there's so much data involved. If there's anything that you learned from this episode, no, you should be buying now. And if you buy in 6 months, you're going to be fist fighting 20 people in a parking lot like last year.
Yeah, look, I mean, I threw another chart sheet. This is the 30-year fixed rate. You can see it right there. It peaked in October, and it's coming back down. And as that drops into the, I think, mid-fives, if we get into the fours, guys, it's going to be absolutely bananas. Like, if we get into the fours, it's going to be insane. But that's the data right there. We're at the very beginning of this thing. And it reminds me, if you guys played sports, it reminds me of like I play basketball, and like if a guy is like, if you see a guy just like take a half a step too slow, you got an opportunity to go around, or you can step up on it. It's like all these investors right now are taking a little like half step. You just got to be a half step faster immediately in front of them. And that's what I'm seeing out there in the marketplace, at least on the investor side. And heck, I'm trying to buy a freaking lake house for me, like, and I'm just like beating this woman up. I'm like, we never know, rates could explode to 900%. Like, sell it to me now. But I don't think she's buying it. But I'm like, I think you could sneak out some really stellar deals right now that a year from now you're going to look back and say, man, I should have bought. In fact, you guys mentioned the super investor meeting. Right there at the end before COVID, we would get almost 1,000 people at that meeting. And I usually speak once a year. And one of the things I would say when I get on stage is, how many of y'all have been in real estate investing for at least 5 years? A bunch of people raise their hands. And how many of you wish you bought more houses at retail 5 years ago? And the same hands would stay up. And then I'd say, why do you think this market's any different? Like, you just, if it cash flows, you buy it. If it's cash flow neutral, you buy it. If it's in a good neighborhood, if it's in a neighborhood that's gentrifying, if it's got good school, just buy it. It is not that difficult. The guys that I routinely hang out with that are wildly successful are incredibly simple. They buy it and they wait. And when they wait 5 or 10 years, these things double in value, and then they sell it and pay some stuff off. And then you look around and go, damn, I got a portfolio of $15 million here, and it's free and clear, and it's kicking off 10, 15, 20% a year in cash flow. Like, I mean, it gets to the point where it's hard to spend the money if you do it right.
Right. 100%. Well, with that, I think the best thing to do is, if you're looking for any type of real estate investing advice, obviously, we'd love to talk to you. If you reach out to Jason, what's the best way to get a hold of you? Social media, things like that.
Yeah, probably email Jason at mrtxre.com, Mr. Tex. You type in Jason Bible Real Estate, let's hope it comes up. I got a bunch of marketing people out there, make sure all of our stuff works. So Jason Bible Real Estate, there's a million ways to follow us, and you can do it that way.
Okay, awesome. If you are not using hard money and you need a lender to finance your investment properties, Dave, how do people get a hold of you?
Dave, your mortgage guy, on pretty much everything. So Instagram, YouTube, the website is daveyourmortgageguy.com.
.com. Awesome. And if you're looking to partner with a residential or partially commercial real estate team, reach out to us. Selling with the Snyder Group, we're available on all platforms, and we'd be happy to talk to you about investing or even just buying or selling real estate in general. With that being said, guys, I absolutely appreciate your time today, and we will see you guys on the next one.
Bye, guys.